Motherhood is not a natural talent, honey. It's a skill, and you can learn it. And one of the ways is by learning from my guest today. And my guest is Suzanne Venker, and I am excited for her to join us. Welcome to the Moms Like Us podcast, where moms just like you learn strategies, systems, and skills through expert interviews and real-life insight designed to take your marriage, mothering, and home to the expert level. Hi, I'm Mona Corwin, your mom mentor and host, author, international speaker, and the founder of the Moms Like Us Academy. I've been coaching moms for over 25 years, and I have some really good news for you. Motherhood isn't a natural talent. It's a skill, and you can learn it. You can crush it at motherhood instead of motherhood crushing you. So let's get to today's show. Hi there.
Hi, Mona.
I am so glad that you're here. Y'all are in for a treat. This is Suzanne Venker. Now, Suzanne is one of the boldest women that I know in the area of talking about womanhood and the effects of it from the culture that we are in, and how we can change it so that we can be women that really do succeed at marriage and don't screw up our kids. I want to read to you. She just wrote a new book. I'm going to tell you about her books in just a second. But I want to read the bio that I wrote for Suzanne because I just didn't think I could get it all in and I didn't want to mess up. So here it is. Suzanne is one of the boldest voices for truth and common sense regarding men and women, marriage, and motherhood. She continually sheds light on the lies that the feminist movement have used to devalue motherhood, marriage, and womanhood. Lies that act like they have empowered women, but actually cause women to become victims. The best words that I've heard Suzanne say are women can't have it all at once, but they can have most of it over the course of a lifetime. I love this because that's what the world's been telling us, is that we can have it all. Girl, you can't have it all. Not all at the same time. She is a marriage and relationship coach and has authored 5 books, all of which I have read. She is The Flip Side of Feminism, which is this one. I'm going to tell you about those in a minute. The Alpha Woman's Guide to Men and Marriage and the Two-Family Income Trap are among my absolute favorites. Her newest book, How to Get Hitched and Stay Hitched, could be the game changer for a generation of women that are starving for marriage and a meaningful life. This book is dedicated to single women, but I personally count it as a perfect now that I'm married book. What do I do? And it is a parenting book, in my opinion. And the review that I wrote for Suzanne absolutely says that that's exactly what I think. Because how great would it be to raise girls and boys, for that matter, with wisdom that works? She's a columnist, and her work can be seen in all the great places like Time Magazine, USA Today, MSN, The Daily Caller, The Washington Examiner, and a whole bunch more. Her 2012 article at Fox News, The War on Men, remains one of Fox's most read opt-in ads in history, which took her to the Tucker Carlson Tonight Show, as well as being on The View. And that you get like major kudos, Suzanne. Those women scare me. They scare me.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. She is married to what she calls her Renaissance man, and we're going to ask her about that, for 23 years, and they have 2 grown children. You'll find more of her wisdom on her podcast, The Suzanne Venker Show, and on Instagram. She has lots of really good stuff on Instagram. You all are in for a treat, and I'm thrilled to introduce you to Suzanne. Oh my gosh, my friend, I'm so glad that you are here today.
Thanks for having me, Mona. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great. Sounds really good. When you decided to write the book, this is the book that you just finished writing, How to Get Hitched and Stay Hitched. Oops.
Yeah.
You had single women in mind. Tell me about exactly how you
did.
decided.
I did, because the book before that, The Alpha Woman's Guide to Men and Marriage, it's actually The Alpha Female's Guide to Men and Marriage.
Which
that's
we
the
talked
book I love
about
to have
this.
on my books. That's so awesome. Look at you. That's amazing.
Yeah,
love it, love it, love it.
It's the best book.
That's basically for married women. That's what's it say? Best advice ever. Oh my God, I love it. Oh my God, that's so awesome. Oh my gosh. Thank you. That book is for wives specifically, wives who have a tendency to be controlling and micromanaging, which, let's face it, I think is most women today. And it's part memoir, part self-help. So that's for women. Married women. The more recent book, I did have single women in mind. There is a chapter at the end about how to be a wife, just a few little takeaways, just one little chapter. But you're right. The bulk is for single women because, look, the reality is marriage is falling, right? The marriage rates are falling. Cohabitation is up. Young people it's so hard to explain until you see it up close, like really how far away their mindset is about marriage from when you and I grew up or any other previous generation. This is so new. But they really believe it's totally optional, even if you want kids or not. So in other words, if you don't want to get married, that's fine. I'm not trying to persuade you to get married. But if you do want to get married, you're swimming with a bunch of people who don't want to get married and a culture that's telling you it's no big deal. You don't need men. You can have kids without men. Marriage swallows you whole. Focus on your career. All these messages that are so counterproductive to what most women want. So even though we have a declining marriage rate, the statistics show that the overwhelming majority of single, unmarried young people want to get married someday. Yeah. They still want to. So what's happening doesn't match what is wanted and desired. So if you were to ask the average young person today why they're not getting married, you'll get one stock answer for most of them, and that's that they can't afford to. Mm-hmm. And that gets into the economics of it, which I don't want to do today, and I don't do that in my book. But rather than get into the economics of that answer, it's more important to understand how we got here. How do we get to a place where you feel that you can't afford to, right? And that's because of the emphasis on education and career at the expense of marriage and motherhood, not alongside it. So people are going to college when they can't afford it and just taking on all kinds of student loan debt. And that's the big, massive answer they'll give you as to why they're not getting married. By having prioritized the wrong thing. And so that's pretty much the argument in my book, is that by the time you made that massive shift in priority in your 20s, it has a domino effect. And every decision you make after that depends on each prior decision you made. So for example, you're focusing on education and career exclusively and forgetting about relationships and just moving in and out of long-term committed relationships. Sometimes you're living with them, sometimes you're not. Sometimes they're hookups, sometimes they're not. Basically just without an eye on marriage, which is racking up all kinds of problems relationally for you because it's not healthy or normal to do that anyway. But also in your not only your prime fertile years, but your prime years to make strong decisions that will benefit you 10 years down the line, i.e. choosing the right mate. So that 10 years from now, you actually have the life you want. You're focusing on something else. And that something else is the years are going by, and then you're hitting 30, 31, 32, and you're thinking, oh yeah, I have to get married now. But guess what? You don't have the same sexual marketability that you did 10 years prior, number one. And that's why you're going around saying, where'd all the good men go? They didn't go anywhere, honey. They took the younger women who were marriage-minded, right? They weren't, the average man is not interested in marrying a woman who's career focused. The average guy is not. Now, he may not say that because he's been just as
indoctrinated.
Yes, by feminism and those lies. So he'll act one way. He'll pretend like that's all great, and he might even think it's great until he actually gets married and has kids, and he realizes, oh, this isn't so great. But he might tell you what you want to hear when you're dating. Because he doesn't know any better. But the reality is I'm concerned about what's going to happen once the kids come, because that's when everything changes.
Yes.
That's when everything you knew to be true falls out the window once you have children. And those gender differences, those sex differences become like a spotlight on it once you have kids. It's not so obvious before that. So in order to set you up for the kind of decisions and the kind of lifestyle that you're going to want in your 30s, let's say in your mid 30s, you have to make smart decisions at 25. You can't just forget about it until you're 35 and think you're going to make it, it's all going to work out. And that doesn't even get into fertility. And I have a whole chapter on knowing your body so that you can work with that. So it's all about working with human nature and biology and things that don't change, that we know don't change, and marrying those with the reality that life changes and society changes. And how are you going to work with the current culture by accepting that you still have to abide by things that don't change? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does, especially when you're talking about eggs.
Yeah, especially when we're talking about eggs. So this is a guide for I call it a 12-step program for the marriage-minded woman.
When I first saw it, I thought it was the 12-step detox is what I thought it was.
Well, because
which basically it is, right?
That's the title of one of the part one is detox. No, part one is the second part is the detox. The 12-step program is the detox from the lies the culture tells. And if you're a woman who has bought into those lies, this book isn't going to be for you, because until you're ready to accept that you've been lied to, you're not going to embrace this at all. This is for the women who know for a fact that what they want is opposite from what the culture tells them they should want, and they need some sort of roadmap. And this is
okay, let's talk about those lies. There's 4 of them.
Yeah.
Motherhood plus marriage equals jail.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Never depend on a man. Mm-hmm. Sex is just sex. And career success will and should define you. I think that right there, just illuminating in the very front of this book, I was absolutely like, yes, 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 amen, amen, amen. Because that is it. Like in a nutshell. So well done, Suzanne. So well done. Talk to us about those 4 lies that women.
So
now it's just not these teenage girls. It's their moms and probably their grandmoms.
Depending on what age we're talking about. So I would say anyone who was born after 1960. After 1960, I was born in 1968. Now I didn't absorb it, but that's for other reasons. That's because of the women in my family. It's just a whole nother story. Right. But anybody, maybe over 65, if you're born 1965 or later, up till now, you're absorbing these messages, whether you're aware of it or not. Even if it's not expressly stated in that way, you're getting that message through TV, through newspapers, through magazines, through school, college. I mean, everywhere you go.
Thank you, Spin Sisters.
Yes, right. Remember that book? That was.
I read it.
Yeah,
you told me to read it. I read it.
I did.
Yeah.
I have quite the library. I mean, I've been doing this for so many years. I mean, if it's been written on this subject, I've read it.
I'm with you.
Okay, so those are the 4 that came to my mind. I thought, what is it that people have absorbed that they just can't get out of their head until it's too late? Often, which is when they call me for coaching, which is what I'm trying to avoid with this book. This book is supposed to keep you from calling me 10 years down the road and saying, "Oh my God, what now?" Because it's a job to unravel it. And as I see the moms that I see, and I'm coaching, these are the lies. These are absolutely the lies. And then they come up to the reality that motherhood is nothing like this. They want to run. They just want to run back to the office. Just run back to where they get a 30-day, review, and they're getting bonuses, because kids don't do any of that. No, and then you get into, which I've written about extensively, people's inability to put the needs of children before their own and accept that your rewards will come much, much later. It's not going to be immediate. And so you're dealing with a culture that's just the moment you have a thought or feeling or desire, you have it met. And it's just not the way for either marriage or motherhood.
Do you think that feminism really brought to a head the you need to think about yourself, like an inner, like a self thing, and then no consequences? The no
Right.
consequences thing that they
No.
keep talking about that our kids have now, like everybody gets a trophy and all that. They're like blaming all this. Friend, this is back then when it was like there are no consequences for sex and never depending on a man, and career will define me, and marriage and motherhood is jail. Like there are consequences for that. And the consequences come from being selfish. The act
right.
of serving people and being
And that's why you're
kind
so
is gone.
dissatisfied and on medicine, because you're so depressed, because you're not giving, you're just getting. And you're just not getting it. You don't get what it is all about. And of course, we don't, as a culture, foster that in any way. So there's so many things coming at young people that it's overwhelming. Like it was one thing 20 or 30 years ago, they're dealing with a certain message, but now you have everything that's happened with social media and technology that's created an environment that's now has just exacerbated a problem that was already there to begin with, which is to stay focused on yourself, me. Everything's about the woman. Everything's about the mom. As long as she's happy, it doesn't matter. All that stuff that's been around for a while, add technology and social media into that, and temptations of like seeing everything that's around you and believing it and thinking that their life is so great because it looks so pretty, but it really isn't. All these things are just making the whole damn process of getting married, having a family, virtually impossible for young people. I mean, I really am scared about it. It's nerve-wracking because the only way to avoid it, in my opinion, is to be raised in a home that is specifically counteracting those messages. And so many of the young people, as you say, are raised by mothers and fathers, mostly mothers, who themselves believed this stuff. So the young people are getting it from the culture and their mothers. This focus on education, career. I'm not against education, career. I'm saying in conjunction with building a life with a man, if that's what you want, if you want to have a family and having children, they don't need to be at odds. They don't need to be in conflict.
But you know what I'm seeing? I'm seeing something really interesting. A lot of women are kind of getting that. They're like, oh, I really can, especially with the internet. Now I really can. But you know what they're doing? They're still trying to do it all at the same time. And they're saying you can do it all the same. They are still trying to have it all.
They think if they're planted in the home, doing all their work in the home, that's somehow any different. No, it's only different if you can work around your kid's schedule and work when they're not needing you, when they're asleep, when they're at school, those types of things. But of course it's chaos, especially since the pandemic, when the kids are home and they're non-school age kids and you're working full time and year round. Well, of course that doesn't work. Just because you're in the house, how could that possibly work?
It should have alerted them, but it's I'm really, really seeing this. They really are thinking, if I just tweak a few things, I can make this happen, and I can make all the money that I was going to make outside, and it's just not true. I heard you say, while raising our children, we have to care more about them and their future happiness than what other people or the culture think. And that's living counterculturally. But how do they, I can hear my mom's like, I agree. But how do I do this? How do I raise my girls in this culture? Yes, I can teach them what's in here, but how do I raise them, or my boys for that matter, to look for women like that?
You have to take every opportunity. I mean, it helps if you're really engaged in what's going on socially with your spouse. It's a no-brainer in my house because we're overly engaged, as my daughter would say. Like, she just grew up hearing it an onslaught of it all the time. There's no way it wouldn't have gotten into both my son and my daughter. But I realize that not everybody's going to be like my husband or me. But just generally involved, reading the paper, being aware of what's being said, knowing what's going on in your kid's classroom, listening to reading the news, whatever it is, and then counteracting that the moment you read it or see it and telling your kids the truth. Hey, here's what's missing from this conversation. Here's what you didn't hear today. You're missing information, and you can't really be educated if you don't have the whole picture. And maybe focus less on the being indoctrinated, because they might roll your eyes at that, like,
Yeah,
oh,
they
you
don't
just
like
think
that.
that because you're conservative or
Because
because
you're
you're
old.
yeah, or because you're old. No, it's just half the story. So you need the other half of the story, and you have to know that other half of the story, and then tell them. So it's, I mean, it could be as simple as just watching everyday TV or shows that they watch. And depending on how old, hopefully there's some shows you're not letting them watch, but then once they are old enough and they're watching relatively benign, if that's even possible, shows, you talk to them throughout. So one of the things that my daughter, it's very funny. I mean, I literally couldn't watch anything. Gilmore Girls, we watched a lot of Gilmore Girls together. Anything together without stopping or pausing, going, okay, no, wait a minute. In the real world, here's what would happen. And she's like, oh my God, I just want to watch the show. Can you just be quiet for the whole show? It was really difficult. I'm not sure I've ever gotten through one episode of anything without.
No, I got up and
walked.
I got up and walked out of, I think it was Pocahontas, the movie. I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm done.
Me.
I'm done.
That's me.
And it was a cartoon. It was like a Disney cartoon. And I'm like, this is terrible. And we were in the back row, and my daughter's going, shh.
Yep. Same.
I'm the same.
Now, but
it's because we learned it. It's again.
You can't unknow it. You can't unknow what you know.
You can't unsee it either.
You can't unsee it. And so, unfortunately, that's the downside of having the parent who's really engaged in that way. But the flip side, and it's harder. It is harder to parent that way than to just throw your hands up in the air and say, whatever, it's too much for me to handle.
Which is another reason why you should not be working 40 hours a week.
Well, right. Because you're not going to be engaged if you're
You're going to be exhausted trying to do all that. And, I got my makeup. Do all that. And then, like, seriously, why put that kind of stress on yourself?
Listen, the most ideal situation going forward, as far as I'm concerned, moving forward forevermore, and it's not just my opinion, actually polls have shown this, is part-time work. There is not enough focus on part-time work for mothers because the goal is to be fully in and rise to the top, right? That's the message from the culture. That's what they want. They want women out of the home, into the workforce, and rising all the way to the top in government, CEOs. Well, you don't do that working part-time. So this is in complete opposition to that. But if you ask the actual women themselves what they want for their lives, once they become wives and mothers, it's to work part-time or not at all, depending on the age of their children. So maybe the first 5 years you're not working at all, right? And then they're in school and you go to part-time. That is the ideal life.
It is. And I don't think that's our opinion.
Well, it is my opinion, but it
is my opinion, but I don't think it's just our opinion. I think the studies show it.
The studies do show it, but they're up against a message. They're up against an agenda that differs from what they want. So they're not going to hear anything from above helping guide them into that life. That's what my work does, is guiding you into the life of basically what I just described, is moving in and out of the workforce as the needs of your children change, with the focus being on your family so that you don't have guilt, so that you don't have stress, so that you can have both in a different way than the way it's presented in the culture.
Well, it's because the value has been placed. I mean, Melinda Gates just said, like, women need to be out there contributing to society and to the economy and to the way the world runs. I'm like, okay, like, who's taking care of the kids? Which they're very happy to find a place for that. You know, this leads us to my next question. I think this is a perfect spot to inject it. Is one more thing that your book talks about is that women are lied to, is that they are oppressed. Why don't you talk about that? Because that's what you're saying, is that, well, you can't have this because you're a woman. He can have it, but you can't have it. And this is what they're saying. I'm oppressed.
Right. So oppressed from what? Oppressed what? There isn't anything that you can't do. No one's holding you back from doing it if you are willing to sacrifice something else to get there.
Yeah.
That's simple. Now, there are women who want to do that. They regret it, most of them, so I don't advise it. But you can do it. No one is stopping you. No one. Now, that doesn't mean you might not have hurdles along the way, and individuals who might step in your way and try to, quote unquote, keep you from doing something. But as a society, no one's oppressing you because of your sex.
Yes.
You are up against the reality of realizing that you can't essentially pursue a demanding full-time year-round career and have a family. That you just can't. We are fighting about that 40 years after we started fighting about it, and nothing's changed. It doesn't mix those two things. And so rather than admit that and just deal with that and understand that the battle is over time,
yes,
I'd rather fight and pretend and expend my energies screaming at the culture that they're keeping you from doing it, which is a complete waste of your life. You're going to spend years fighting a ridiculous battle that can never be won.
I remember, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I just have so many things I want to say to you, or I want you to say to us. I remember back at the beginning, the seed was discontent. And it's like, it goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden, where Eve thought Adam and God were holding out on her. Nothing new under the sun.
Mm-hmm. No, nothing new here.
Nothing new. But they're actually thinking that, I remember them saying, I have to go find myself. So it's the whole thing that is innate, and it is our in Genesis, when it talks about our curse, that we will have pain in childbirth. But then the very next part of that same curse that women and pastors don't talk about, it says, and you will want to be over your husband, and he will rule over you. In other words, you will want to roll and rule and roll over everything, and you won't be able to do that. And so I'm seeing that is kind of what's going on, is that women want to be in charge of everything. They're bossy, they're bitchy. They, bossy, bitchy babes with briefcases. And it's totally, that is being emulated instead of, right. Hey, this is something I have to deal with all the time, that I want to run over not just my husband and my kids. I'm happy to run over the PTA people and my boss and, the woman down the street. This is who women are.
It's not really who they are. It's who they, you're right. It's like they're playing a part and they're really shielding themselves. What all that is insecurity, shielding itself from letting anybody in, right? Mm-hmm. And feeling that they're going to be hurt because they have no role models for how to get it right. And they're going to steal their hearts and put up their shields so that a man doesn't hurt them. And so when they're walking around doing all that stuff, again, talk about seeing something and not unseeing it. I see that clearly what that is, right? And smart men do, and run, because there's nothing you can do with that woman. She's not going to, until she's ready to let go and trust and believe that she is actually in a more powerful position to embrace her femininity. I hate that word because I can never say it right. And learn how to bring
out a good word.
Right. Learn how to bring out the best in her man, so that she does ultimately get what she wants, and he gets what she wants, and all that stuff. He gets what he wants, but they're too resistant, and they have no. It's just a shield. That's all it is. And so, and I deal with the people in the coaching who are ready to let it go. It's always the same thing. The message I always get is the same thing. Is two things. One, why didn't anyone tell me this sooner? Which is why I wrote this book, because I get so frustrated with hearing this over and over again. I wish I had met you 20 years ago. I wish I had met you 10 years ago. My whole life would have been different. And you hear it over and over. You're like, okay, these young people need a roadmap. But then I'm frustrated because they're not really ready for the roadmap yet. They're not ready to hear it yet. So it's like, it's out there, but it's a certain kind of person who's going to be able to embrace it.
But I think you should take heart. Number one, your message is getting out. And I do believe that there's a hunger now. And the women that I'm seeing, Suzanne, I'm seeing a lot of career women that are coming home.
I don't wonder about it. I know the pandemic has a lot of women at home. And if you read the newspaper, you'll find out that, according to the media, these women are miserable because they are being thrust out of the workplace into the home, and they're clamoring to come back. But I say, you know what? I'm sure there are a few people like that, but there are just as many, if not more, who are realizing what they're missing and want a different life altogether.
And I think
And I
that's where
think
you
those
come in.
people- Yeah, for sure.
Where you come in. And this book is very, very timely. And your podcast addresses all of these things. And so if you are in the Moms Like Us Academy, you are going to get a really good treat, because our masterclass this month is Suzanne, and she's going to be talking about what a man needs and how only you can give it to him. And you are going to love it. So if you're not in the Moms Like Us Academy, I suggest that you join, because we are learning things like this. Because moms like us, girl, we got to do things like this. Suzanne, thank you so much for being on our show today. You are a treasure. And like I said, it was just so fun to see, I'm not alone. I'm literally not alone, because there are women just like us that are saying the time is now. And there is a generation of women that are hungry for it. You're seeing it in your practice. I'm seeing it in the academy and the moms that I coach too. And it's interesting you said that about no regrets. Our anchor course, our signature course, is called No Regret Motherhood Blueprint. That's what it's called.
Oh, that's good. I like
it.
That.
It is, because they're living in regrets.
Yeah.
And we don't have to live in regret. There will be things we'll be sorry or wish we had done differently, but we don't need to live in this kind of a regret that affects our marriages and our children. Absolutely. So please just keep doing what you're doing. You are a treasure in our culture. And I want you to know that no matter what they're all saying out there in media world, which none of us are even listening to anymore, I know you still have to go out there and make your mark. The rest of us are cheering you on from here.
Thank you, Mona. Appreciate that.
Okay. All right. Now, moms like us, we do things like this. I want you to remember, today, your mothering matters. Your marriage matters. And sweetheart, you matter. You matter to your family. You matter to God. And you matter to the children that you are raising and the culture and the generation that's going to come behind us. Because you know what? What if you are raising children that are going to change the world? Can you be that kind of a mother? Well, I think you can. And you just keep watching, and I will see you next time on Moms Like Us Do Things Like This. Bye for now.